Hello there, people of the internet. I have heard a couple of times a little story about the M1 carbine. I've had quite a few people tell me that the M1 carbine makes a fantastic brush gun and that it was used in, say, Korea and Vietnam specifically because it was so good at punching through brush in comparison to other things. And I don't necessarily know where this particular, I don't want to call it rumor, comes from, but this gun myth, I don't know where this particular gun myth comes from, but the M1 carbine is not a very good brush gun. It's fantastic for going through the jungle because it's nice and lightweight and easy to use, and since you're going to be going up against whatever force it is that you're going up against and you're in the jungle, you're going to be up close with one another. You don't have to touch out to really long distances, so you don't need a cartridge to be able to touch out to really long distances. Lots of benefits for something like this. But as far as a brush gun goes, I don't think that people really understand what a brush gun is if they think that the 30 caliber carbine cartridge is a good brush cartridge. So how do I start this? Whenever it comes to having a brush gun, having a heavier bullet is what makes a good brush gun. Now the M1 carbine, that is a 110 grain bullet, and it's going to be moving at about 2,000 feet per second approximately. So it's not the heaviest of bullets, and it's moving pretty fast, and whenever you combine those two factors, whenever that bullet smacks something, even if it is just like a leaf or a twig or something like that, because of the extremely lightweight bullet and its relatively good velocity, once it smacks into something, it's going to be thrown off course pretty gosh darn well. Versus something that is a heavier bullet, like say a 44 Magnum, that's, I don't know, a 240 grain bullet. There's other bullets out there, but I think that's going to be one of the most common bullet weights for it. That's a relatively heavy bullet, and it's going to be traveling, for its mass, it's going to be traveling relatively slowly. And combine those two factors, if that 44 Magnum smacks into a leaf or a twig or something, with the momentum that bullet has because of its mass, it's going to have a much better chance at punching through that thing, or at least not deviating off course nearly as much as that really lightweight, fast-moving bullet of the 30 caliber carbine. A way to be able to visualize this: say we have a wall, I don't know, it's a brick wall for people who need visualizations on a wall, and you had a little tiny pebble, and you yeeted that son of a bitch as hard as you could against that wall. That little pebble is probably going to hit that wall and bounce off pretty gosh darn well. But let's say you did that same thing with a much heavier full-sized brick. You hit that wall with that brick, and the momentum of the brick, which is traveling in this direction, is going to do a much better job at keeping the brick traveling in this direction. It's going to hit that wall and probably not deviate off course nearly as much as that pebble would have. The pebble hit, probably make a full-fledged 90 degrees and go off into the distance somewhere, versus that brick, which is going to hit and most likely travel nearly the direction of the wall. So that's just because that greater mass has more momentum. It has more matter there keeping it moving in that particular direction. And because of the laws of physics, we know that an object in motion is going to stay in motion unless it is subjected to a force. I can't quite remember how that particular rule goes, but I'm pretty sure it's somewhere along the lines of that. And so as a result of that, the heavy mass, the large amount of matter inside of your heavier bullets, as it travels in that direction, there's more stuff, there's more bullet traveling in that direction, and so you need a greater force to be able to knock that bullet off of its track. So you need more than a leaf or a stick or a twig to cause that bullet to have any real significant deviations. Now, there is a limitation, like you're not going to go send that bullet through a tree without it, getting significantly smacked off course. But that heavier bullet would be able to sustain more in terms of accurate fire onto its target. Ooh, I got the hiccups, guys. I'm sorry about that. In terms of accurate fire on its target when firing through brush in comparison to a smaller, lighter weight bullet. And as we get heavier, we see better results. Like this right here is a Trapdoor Springfield in 4570. You can fire 500 grain bullets from this thing, and those 500 grain bullets are going to be pretty gosh darn good at keeping their momentum and flying through whatever brush it is that you're looking at. That's one of the reasons why 4570 makes such a good brush gun, or 44 Magnum makes such a good brush gun. Heck, even 45 ACP would make a pretty gosh darn decent brush gun if you went out and got yourself like a PCC chambered in that, versus something like 30 caliber carbine, or versus something like 5.56, even something like 7.62 by 39, or say 308 or 30-06. Those would be better options just because those bullets have more mass. If you have, say, a 30-06 with a 150 grain bullet, that 150 grain bullet for, I mean, I get that it's a relatively heavy bullet, but it's a lightweight bullet for 30 caliber standards. As we bump that up to higher masses, higher grain weight counts, say like a 220 grain, as we bump that up to heavier bullets, we start to see less deviation in terms of impact on brush, causing that bullet to go off just because that bullet has more mass and has more ability to be able to punch through things. We see the same sort of concept whenever it comes to penetration. If we're talking about penetration, people confuse penetration and what is and is not capable with these penetrations. Whenever people think of penetration, oftentimes they think of like a metal plate or a piece of body armor or something like that. And if it punches through that body armor, then they'll think that thing that punched through the body armor is better than the other things at penetration, but it all depends on what it is that you're shooting at. Like, for example, there's certain body armors out there that a 5.56 from a 20-inch barrel can punch right through. Like, just a standard lead core 5.56 55 grain bullet from a 20-inch barrel will be able to punch through certain kinds of body armor, and something else like 308 would not be able to do that. And there's certain things that go into that. It mostly has to do with 5.56 velocities, because velocity is what defeats body armor. But if we start looking at other things, like, say, wood or concrete, or, I don't know, a large animal or something like that, to where we're looking at more than just a ½ inch of penetration that would be needed, that's where bullet weight really starts to play its part, because of that increased mass, that increased momentum, assuming that the bullet isn't just completely destroyed like a 5.56 round most likely is after impact with that target. That bullet with that more momentum, once it smacks into its target, especially if it's a relatively soft target like a large game animal, that heavier mass will be able to carry that bullet deeper just because of the increased momentum of that round. Like, it's the same concept of punching through brush. I guess that's my take on brush guns. The M1 carbine is not a brush gun. It's a fantastic little jungle gun, and you can do a lot with it, but it's certainly not a brush gun because it doesn't quite meet the requirements that I would say a brush gun has. So thanks for watching, folks. I appreciate your time. Like, subscribe, share. Description below is a link to all sorts of stuff. Go check it out. You guys go off, have yourself a fantastic day, and I will see you on the next episode.
Been a little while since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. Poor man's Garen. It's a shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.